This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown, an FFPC podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and, of course, the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. And, of course, the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. You heard the intro there. RV Radio 2022 is the 10% listeners only discount that you can get. So make sure you're taking advantage of that with rotoviz.com. And if you want to put those tools that you're getting for free once you join RotoViz, if you want to put those to your full advantage, play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. Just choose 10 players or 12 players. We have the slim format available for 10 players. We have the classic format available for 12 players. Just one player per team. Get them in by Sunday's kickoff, and then you can just watch them ride out through the rest of the weekend games. You can enter for $35. You can enter for $200. Remember, there is a 10-team game for $200 where the winner will take all, and the winner will get a 2023 FFPC Main Event entry. So if you want to play in the FFPC Main Event for $1 million next year for free, this is what you have to do. Get in now. myffpc.com. That is where to go. Let's bring in tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard him on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. You've heard him on this show before, and we're welcoming back tonight because he is in 5th place in the FFPC Main Event as he chases a $1 million grand prize this year. You follow him on Twitter at FFLinks. He is the incomparable Ryan Santos. Ryan, welcome into the show. Thanks so much for carving out some time on Tuesday to do this.
No problem. How you doing, Balky?
Doing good. So I was always hesitant to do this show on Wednesdays when I'm trying to bring in high stakes owners. I assume Wednesday is the big waiver night for you, right?
Yeah, Wednesdays could get a little hectic between all the stakes and dynasty.
How much time do you spend a week on waivers? Just curiously.
I couldn't even tell you. I spend probably a day.
It's is it like what percent of it is on Wednesdays? Is it like 70-80% of all your waiver stuff go on that day, or are you putting stuff in as soon as the games end or as soon as the games start on Sunday? Are you putting in claims on Sunday night and Monday?
Yeah, I'm starting Sunday afternoon. Try to get as much as I can in Monday, Tuesday, so Wednesdays aren't too hectic. But a lot changes usually by Wednesday afternoon. You
know, that's always my concern too. Is like I just want to place waivers once, but the more leagues that you do, as you know, the more leagues you do, the more difficult and problematic it becomes to try to place them all on Wednesday. So the key is to put them in as early as you can in the week, and then tweak them as we get the injury reports coming in on Wednesday and everything. And it's never going to be perfect. It's always what is Lauren Michaels always used to say this about Saturday Night Live. The show is not done at 11:30 on Saturday nights. The show goes live on 11:30 on Saturday nights, and that's a lot like waivers, right? When they get processed in the FFPC and on Wednesdays, doesn't mean your waivers are done. That's just when they get processed.
Oh, yeah.
One of the guys, Ryan, that you had picked up on waivers, Dion Jackson, you had him going this past week. He obviously played a huge role in how good you did this. I think you were coming into this week like 12th. You moved up to 5th. How do you handle a guy like Dion Jackson on your roster now, knowing that there's a very real possibility that the Colts not only get Jonathan Taylor back this week, but Nyheim Heinz back this week as well? How much are you fighting? I don't know if you have Dion Jackson on a bunch of your teams, but how hard are you fighting to keep Dion Jackson along for the ride right now?
Yeah, Dion Jackson's kind of a complicated one. Pretty much had everything fall perfectly for him this past week. Sunday morning, I picked him up. I think I picked him up for like $20-something in FAB. Got pretty lucky. I was looking as a flex. Obviously, I didn't think he was going to be the running back 1 overall for the week, but If there's no news by Wednesday, I'll likely try to hold him. But if we get any kind of inkling that Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines are going to play, I just don't see a reason to hold him. Just because he needed basically both of them to be out for him to get the kind of shares that he got. So he's somebody I would like to hold, but if both of them are going to play, it's probably somebody I could cut bait with.
Yeah, and I was talking with Dave the Dizzle Gerzak about this morning. The teams that are on bye this week, it's the Bills, it's the Rams, it's the Eagles, and the Vikings are the other one. So I mean, a lot of difference makers. And then we have a 6-week bye coming up, and yeah, it's nice to keep Dion Jackson around, but he just might be a luxury that fantasy teams can't afford. And let's go deeper into this Colts situation, Ryan. We saw what Dion Jackson did on Sunday. Why can't Jonathan Taylor? Why has he not been able to put it together this year for all those teams that drafted him first overall?
That's a great question. I mean, he did most of his work through the passing game, which I guess Taylor hasn't. I mean, I guess he had Naheem Hines nipping at him, but maybe if they use Jonathan Taylor a little more in the passing game, he'd be up there.
Yeah, and I don't. It's one of those things like I'm still waiting for Aaron Jones to sort of get going in Green Bay, and I've been questioning it's fine if your offensive line isn't blowing up open holes, but then get him involved in the passing game. I mean, Aaron Jones 4 targets. Jonathan Taylor has shown that he can be a capable pass catcher. It's really strange to see, and I know he's been out a couple of weeks now, but it's strange to see that if he can't get it going, between the tackles or on the ground, that they're not involving him more on screens and wheel routes or passes to the flat and so on and so forth. So that's something that we will see. Hopefully, Jonathan Taylor owners will see going forward.
Hopefully not.
Go ahead.
Hopefully not this week. So use Dion Jackson again. But
exactly, yeah, and that's the thing. So the Colts right now, if I look at the schedule, they have a 1:00 game at Tennessee coming off the bye this Sunday. So you should know fairly early on. The Thursday night game is New Orleans and Arizona. So you should know. And not have to feel like you have to deploy anybody early on Thursday night, and you'll know by 11:30 on Sunday morning whether he's in or out, or whether either one of those guys, Taylor or Hines, are in or out. Some high stakes players in the FFPC, Ryan, they might be tempted not to keep a backup quarterback on their roster when they have a stud quarterback like Lamar Jackson, like Patrick Mahomes, or like you in your 5th place team in Josh Allen. Now, you have Trevor Lawrence on this team, on this 5th place overall team. Why do you think it is important for you to keep a guy like Lawrence around when Josh Allen, except for a bye week, is going to be your every week starter?
Kind of goes league by league. Depends on what quarterbacks are on waivers. In this particular league, there aren't a lot of quarterbacks on waivers who are usable. This team, I feel pretty comfortable that hopefully I should make it to the playoffs. So once the playoffs start, there's no waivers. So I would like to hold on to him just in case something does happen to Josh Allen. He also has some high upside and good playoff schedule as well. So in this league, I plan on keeping him, but there are other leagues where I have top quarterbacks where I don't have a backup.
And that's something I ran into, and I'm not sure if you've played in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, but that's something that I've run into this year where historically, if I'm even drafting not even a top 3 guy, I'm drafting a top 8 guy or even a top 10 guy, I'm not wasting my time on a backup quarterback. I want that extra running back. I want that extra receiver on my team. But as Dak Prescott taught me this year, I might have to revisit that strategy because it has been bad. I've been rolling out Marcus Mariota and Matt Ryan. Jared Goff and Geno Smith have saved me in some leagues. But I think going forward, it's like I'm going to have to apply what you have done. It's sort of like a league by league basis. If the quarterbacks are thin, maybe you want to keep one. If they're being cycled through pretty regularly, then yeah, it's probably okay to just keep the one quarterback on your team without a backup. Let's talk Kansas City Chiefs backfield. I feel like every single show I've done since the start of the season, I've asked my guest about this or my co-host this. Jerick McKinnon has obviously been involved in the ground game, and not even the ground game. He's been involved in the passing game out of the backfield for Kansas City. So given what we've seen from him, how much of an effort, and I don't know how much, Isaiah Pacheco you have on your managed teams, but how much of an effort are you going to try to keep Pacheco on your rosters, knowing this role that McKinnon has once again carved out in the Kansas City backfield?
I don't have a lot of Pacheco in other leagues, but he is somebody I'm trying to hold. The last 2 weeks, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's not looked very well. McKinnon has looked good, but Pacheco has also shown some flashes himself. So he's somebody later on down the road who maybe gets a little more opportunity. And if he does, he showed that he makes a big splash plays.
Do you have a lot of Edwards-Hilaire on your leagues? Just curiously.
I have some in Dynasty. I don't have too much.
Is he a guy that you're nervous starting every week, or it's just because of the offense you feel like you have to roll him out there?
He's somebody I have been starting weekly, but he's somebody that I'm starting to look to maybe keep him on my bench until he shows a little more.
And it's a usage thing, right? I mean, like they have not, because Pacheco and McKinnon have been successful, they have rolled with a bit of a three-headed monster there at running back. Chiefs are visiting San Francisco this week. They're 3-point favorites with a total of 48.5 I'm looking at right now. So this might be a good Edwards-Hilaire week, but go with God, and it may not work out for you this week. Scary scene for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Cameron Brate gets the taken out on the backboard, face mask off, and while we wish nothing but the best for him and his health going forward, we do have to look at this from a fantasy perspective as well. I remember, and Ryan, I don't know if you saw this on Twitter or talked with some other high-stake guys that you're competing against in the during the drafting season about Cade Otton. There's a lot of people I talked to that thought Cade Otton was going to be the guy this year when Gronk said, you know what, I'm good, I'm not coming back. And he ended up getting a little bit of a spike in the main event and the Footballguys Players Championship, again, towards the end of drafting season. Now with Cameron Brate not on the field, is Cade Otton going to be a flex option for FFPC players? And I want to phrase this question with a two-part. How did you view Otton coming into the season? You think about those last few drafts you did before the actual NFL season started. And how do you view Cade Otton now in a tight end premium format like the FFPC?
Early on, I don't think I had any Otton before the season started. I did hold out hope that maybe Gronkowski would come back, but I believe he just took a job with Fox Broadcasting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We won't see that. But for right now, Cade Otton is definitely a must-own, especially with all the injuries that the Bucs have in their wide receiving core. And Brady has shown that he does have a nice connection with him. I think 2 weeks ago, he had a pretty nice game. And he actually dropped him in this league that I'm in 5th place in for Dion Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Brady was back. So now I'll be trying to pick him back up.
He is owned. I'm just looking at the ownership percentage. And by the way, shout out to Darren Armani, Fantasy Mojo on Twitter, fantasymojo.com.
Yeah, Darren's
he's awesome. I mean, like it's such a great tool that he has at Fantasy Mojo, right?
Yeah, I use that especially when I'm drafting the main events to see where guys are going, see different boards.
Cade Otton right now owned in 68% of FFPC main event leagues. He is owned in 64% of Footballguys leagues. So he is still out there. And I do expect, I mean, he's got to be available in a few year leagues. Ryan, are you going to be pretty aggressive with him on the waiver wire this week?
Depending on what I have at tight end. Feels like tight end was such a wasteland. Now we're getting a bunch of rookie tight ends coming out of nowhere that are kind of bringing up the landscape a little bit. So I've been trying to get a bunch of those guys.
Do you feel like you said, tight end's a wasteland? This is something we've heard for several years now. Do you feel like the leagues that you went after an early tight end, your Kelsey leagues, your Mark Andrews leagues, those types of leagues, do you feel like you're way ahead of the curve in those leagues because you went after early tight end? Or in some of your other leagues where you just said, to hell with it, everybody's going to have a bad tight end except for a couple of teams in the league. I'm going to load up on running back. I'm going to load up on receiver. Do you feel like those teams are a little bit better off than the teams you went early tight end?
I kind of like the teams with the early tight end a little bit better because you do find a lot more later round wide receivers or running backs that hit. It's a little harder to make up the points at tight end.
Just another reason to go after Cade Otton hard this week, right? Which is probably what players are going to be doing because they're looking for that next big thing. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's put a pin in that conversation because I do want to talk to you about the rookie tight end out of Denver here in a little bit, and I think that might lead back to Cade Otton a little bit. But I do want to bring up Carolina. Carolina Panthers made a trade this week. Robbie Anderson goes to the Arizona Cardinals in exchange for, I think, a couple of draft picks. So we also found out today that Marquise Brown not a season-ending injury, but an injury that's probably going to keep him out for a significant time. So knowing that Brown is out, knowing that Robbie Anderson is in, what do you think is going to happen with Rondale Moore, Zach Ertz? I mean, I assume that if you have Zach Ertz on your FFPC or your Football Guys teams, you're deploying him every single week. But Rondale Moore, is he now getting into that neighborhood of must start?
Yeah, I think the injury to Marquise Brown was a big bump for Rondale Moore. Zach Ertz was somebody who I liked a lot, but I didn't draft as much, knowing that DeAndre Hopkins was going to come back, thinking that he was going to get squeezed between him and Marquise Brown. Now that he's gone, Zach Ertz might become a top 5 tight end, at least until Marquise Brown is back, possibly for the rest of the season. As far as Robbie Anderson, he's one of the players I hate the most in all of sports. I just dislike him a lot.
As a person or as a player?
As a person, but
okay.
As a player, even if you were to try to pick him up now, chances are he probably doesn't play much this week. If he does, it's probably only a couple of packages. Then you're not going to play him the following week because you want to see what he does. So it's going to be at least 3 weeks until you play him. So for me, it's somebody that I'm not really too interested in picking up. But if you have an extra spot at the end of the bench, it's somebody that's could be worth the stash.
It's a total FOMO stash because maybe Robbie Anderson is nothing, but if you have him in a couple of leagues, if he turns into something, you got him there. DeAndre Hopkins owners, they got to get him in their lineup right away this week, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, you added Odell Beckham on this fifth place team, and I did this in a few of my leagues as well, trying to get ahead of everybody else, knowing that. Yeah, he might not be signing until next month. Yeah, he might not even be startable in fantasy leagues until maybe even later, maybe even early December. But why was it important for you, as far as this team goes, this fifth place team, why was it important for you to maybe get the jump on everybody else in your league and add Odell Beckham a couple of weeks before the large majority of fantasy owners were even thinking about it?
Yeah, I have been trying to add him in most of my main events and dynasty leagues. I think it's pretty inevitable that he's going to sign with the team, but every team he signs with is probably going to be a Super Bowl contender. I still feel like he's probably most likely to go to the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Good rapport with Stafford already, and Allen Robinson hasn't shown too much, so I could see him slipping right back into that wide receiver 2 role and providing a little spark down the end of the season.
Allen Robinson, what we saw this last week, that was an aberration. That was a myth. That's not going to happen again, right?
I'm sure once we start starting him, it'll go back to.
I was so excited in 2 of my Kentucky leagues this year, and I didn't try to do this. It just ended up working out that way. But I got Kupp early. I had Allen Robinson in like the 4th round, and then I got Matthew Stafford. I'm like, oh man, I'm so set with these Ram stacks, and they've been awful. I mean, Stafford's been bad. Robinson has been a new kind of bad. Kupp's been the only really awesome guy in there. And it's one of those things where I think we have to sort of, we've got a big enough sample size to make a judgment on it now. But as you said, I mean, Beckham could sort of change the dynamic of this team again for fantasy purposes once he's healthy.
Yep. And especially they need to start winning soon. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I'm not saying they're going to rush him back, but maybe they get him to come back a little earlier than he would like.
If it's not the Rams, who else do you think he could go to? I mean, you can narrow it down. It's probably going to be a Super Bowl contender. I don't know of any other teams out there that everybody's always looking for that little boost. And maybe it's one of those teams like the Rams were last year where, they didn't necessarily need him, but it worked out that they grabbed him to add to the Kupp and the Woods and the Higbee, the squad there. Is there another team that you'd be pretty excited about if he went to?
As far as like the Chiefs and the Bills, I don't think his fantasy output would be as great. Maybe with the Chiefs, not really having number 1.
Right.
Probably the best outcome for fantasy would be maybe with the Packers.
And I'll tell you this too. As far as the Packers go, they historically have not been a team that has added these veteran receivers, via free agency or the trade deadline. However, you got Christian Watson, who could be going on IR here soon. You have Sammy Watkins, who's still on IR. You have Randall Cobb, who I think will be going on IR soon. So now you're trotting out to catch passes from Aaron Rodgers at the wideout position, a rookie in Romeo Doubs, Juwan Winfrey, who just came off the practice squad, Amari Rodgers, who it seemed like Matt LaFleur would rather chew his own arm off than use him on offense, and Alan Lazard, and that's it. That's 4 receivers, and that's it. So it's they really do need to make a move. And if Beckham were to go there, yeah, it might be a slow start, but it could be very interesting for fantasy purposes in late November, in December, down the stretch run if Beckham ends up going to Green Bay. Want to drop back to the conversation we were having earlier with Cade Otton and these young tight ends, because you said Cade Otton's pretty close to a must-own right now in FFPC and Football Guys. We saw Greg Dulcich make his debut last night after he had been beat up through the late part of training camp and then through this season. He makes his debut last night on Monday Night Football against the Chargers, catches a touchdown, looked pretty good. The offense in Denver is a mess, but maybe Dulcich can be the guy that can squeeze fantasy relevance out of this. How do you view Dulcich going forward, Ryan?
I definitely see him as a must-own and most likely a must-start with just how bad tight end is. We'll see. They're saying Russell Wilson might have a significant injury. So we'll see. I believe the backup was Ripien. I don't even know how to say his name.
Brett Rippin.
So we'll have to see if maybe they have rapport. He's definitely a must-own, though.
And with Dulcich, too, it's just like you would like to think that if he is out there, maybe that frees up Judy more. Maybe that frees up Sutton more. The ground game, I don't know what's going to happen there. Do you have any thoughts after what we saw last night? Because I thought Latavius Murray was a good ad, but I never really expected him to basically, have 5 times as many touches as the next closest guy in that backfield with Mike Boone and Melvin Gordon. How do you see that Denver running back situation shaking out?
I have no idea. I was pretty excited that Melvin Gordon was going to be the starter for the rest of the year. I had him in a ton of dynasty leagues, best ball, but I mean, I don't even know at this point. It seems like Latavius Murray might be the starter for now. Maybe they look to trade Melvin Gordon.
But you look at that Denver situation as a sort of a fluid thing where, Gordon, wasn't involved last night, but there's a very real possibility that all of a sudden he gets 15 carries the next week and then Murray only gets 4 or 5, right? It's
kind of like the Belichick running backs at this point.
Yeah, can't trust it, as Public Enemy told us. After week 6 now, we've got a month and a half of the sample size. Which offense is more concerning to you right now? Is it the Cleveland Browns? And I'm going to just give you 2 options here. Is it the Cleveland Browns or is it the Green Bay Packers, Ryan?
I'd have to say the Packers. Cleveland, besides last week, haven't looked horrible. You kind of like a little narrow tree between Chubb, Cooper, and Njoku have all been playing very well, at least for fantasy. And Green Bay, they just don't have any consistency with Aaron Jones. The only really trustworthy person there is Allen Lazard, who's, seems to be getting you about 15 points a week. But and then Cleveland down the road, towards the end of the season, will get Deshaun Watson back. So if anything, they're going to get more of a boost, where Green Bay is just looking more and more bleak.
Yeah. I want to shift it. Just talk about New Orleans here real quick. Chris Olave says that he's clear concussion protocol. He practiced today. Looks like he's going to be good to go for Thursday night. If you have Chris Olave on your teams, are you rooting for the Saints to be cautious and hold out Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry? Or would you like one of those guys in to take off pressure from Olave to maybe free him up for some more targets? How do you view that situation?
I'd probably say Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry right now I don't know if they're going to play at all the rest of the season, but
okay.
I would say I'd rather have them out for Olave just to maybe get all the targets.
Shifting to Washington, exciting stuff to see Brian Robinson come back now. I think he's got 2 games under his belt after he was actually shot and recovered from those gunshot wounds that he suffered in late August. He's back out there. I thought I was hopeful after I saw him in week 5, after what I saw in week 6, not necessarily from him, but just the Washington offense in general. I was kind of like, oh, God, maybe there's not a whole lot here. The Washington thing going forward, is Brian Robinson a must flex guy, or is he simply matchup dependent? And then Antonio Gibson, are you only playing him if Robinson misses? Is this a guy that's just going to be put, he's going to be put on the pines by high stakes players until some sort of injury develops or something happens with Brian Robinson where Gibson could be the guy again?
It's almost like the Denver backfield where I don't want to play anybody. Brian Robinson, probably matchup dependent. Doesn't really catch the ball, and the team is pretty bad. They're going to be playing from behind most of the time. With Gibson, maybe he does get a little more receiving work now that Brian Robinson has the early down roll. So that might actually save him a little bit. Maybe hopefully he'll get a little bit of McKissick's work. But as a whole, I don't really want to play any of them.
Can you tell me a scenario in which, and I don't know if you have J.D. McKissick on any of your teams, but can you give me the scenario in which you would actually start McKissick in an FFPC main event or Footballguys Players Championship? In other words, if Gibson is out, does McKissick be a guy that you can start? If Robinson is out, is McKissick a guy that you got to flex? How do you view McKissick?
I would say most likely if Gibson's out, since he's the one that will be getting most of the passing work in front of him. I don't really see Brian Robinson getting too much of the passing work. But I have him in a couple leagues, and I think McKissick's going to be a drop for me.
Okay. Yeah, and the thing is, like, I have, and I don't know about you, Ryan, but I've loaded up in my dynasty leagues on receivers, and I've had some pretty bad running back situations already because of injuries and because of bye weeks. And McKissick, man, if I saw him on the waiver wire, I'd be scooping him up so I don't have to start guys like Isaiah Pacheco and Dontrell Hilliard, which is really an indictment on how poorly I've managed my running backs on some of my dynasty teams. But McKissick is the type of guy that can, again, maybe a semi-high floor, definitely a low ceiling, but a guy you can plug in and hopefully get you some points here. Final question for you tonight. I don't know how closely you've looked at waivers or lineups or anything coming up for week 7, but in what you have seen so far, looking at your teams, looking at the lay of the land, looking at the week 7 schedule, knowing who's on bye, can you give us a sleeper player that not a whole lot of high stakes players will be, trotting out there in week 7 that you think they should be? And then conversely, a player that a lot of people will probably start that they're probably going to regret after the games have been played.
Somebody at tight end I think could be a little bit of a sleeper this week is Juwan Johnson. New Orleans Saints with Adam Troutman being out, Andy Dalton possibly being out. If he is, then Taysom Hill playing quarterback at the tight end position would be pretty nice. I also like all the rookie tight ends this week. I mean, it's a big week for tight ends being out with Knox, Goddard, Higbee, Irv Smith. At quarterback, there's a lot of quarterbacks out. I kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo this week. As far as players that I don't want to play, I'd probably say Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe Wilson, the running back in San Francisco.
Yeah, let's talk about him for a second. So I don't know what you make of this, and I'm trying to read between the lines with everything that happened in that Atlanta game. But he's the starting running back there. He gets the 28 yards. He fumbles early, and he's basically never heard from again. Is that a situation where the Niners, have given up on Wilson and they're ready to turn more towards the Tevin Coleman, Tyrion Davis-Price backfield? Or was that a scenario of, hey, the Falcons really blitzed them, they got up, and then the Niners had to pass and sort of abandon the run the rest of the way? How concerned are you if you're a Jeff Wilson owner right now?
I'm not really too concerned, but you got possibly Elijah Mitchell coming back after the bye. This week. I believe they play Kansas City.
Correct.
So they're going to be playing. I mean, most likely they'll be playing catch up. So you're really not going to get too many useful weeks left of him. So he's somebody that if I had him, I'd look to trade him for whatever I could get.
Right. And that leads me into my final question here, because you do play Dynasty. Are there any buy lows, sell highs that you've been, sending out offers for, or, anything like that you're looking at, 6 weeks of play that you're looking to try to figure out, okay, maybe this guy should not be in my roster going forward. Oh my goodness, nobody believes in that guy. I'm going to go out and grab him. Are there any players like that for you right now that you have been sending out offers for?
With how much time waivers been taken, I haven't been doing too many trades.
Probably not.
But I would say maybe if I could trade Clyde Edwards-Helaire, try to maybe sell him. Yeah, I'm not really too sure. I haven't really been making too many trades this year with how waivers have been taking up the time.
When's the majority of your trading done in Dynasty? Is it before the NFL draft? Is it after the NFL draft? Because I'm assuming the most of your trading is done in the off season.
I'm a big advocate of trading my first round picks. When it comes to draft time, I rarely ever have one. I like to trade the picks for somebody useful to help keep my teams afloat. So I mostly have a lot of veterans. I don't really keep too many first round picks.
And it's a strategy that's worked out for you because you're a successful dynasty player in the FFPC and a successful player in the FFPC main event as well. 5th place overall heading into week 7 ahead of nearly 4,000 other teams. I know it's early, but it's got to be cool to see your name up there in the top 5 of the leaderboard, right?
It is nice, and hopefully I get Keenan Allen back this week. That'll help a little bit.
That's huge, man. That is, I mean, because it's weird because I have one team in the KFFSC right now that I had the first pick and I had Jonathan Taylor, and obviously he's been underperforming. But if you can get it together, that team is 6-0 right now. It has Mark Andrews, it has Josh Allen, it's got some good pieces on it. Gabe Davis is on that team. It's got some good pieces, and I think that's what we're looking for right now as we head into, it'll be November before we know it. And we're trying to figure out how do we manage these teams to the best of our ability? Let's get these guys healthy. Let's get past the bye week gauntlet, which I know we're basically just starting. But after that point, it gets really exciting, Ryan.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for hanging out with me on a Tuesday night, talking a little fantasy football. Always like picking your brain. We're going to have you back on the show because I know you're a heavy best ball guy too, and a really accomplished best ball guy. And I always like talking best ball with you too. And after looking at my best ball teams after week 6, I need a lot of help in that area. So I'll be looking for your advice in the off season. We follow you on Twitter at FFLinks. Good luck not only in your 5th place team in the FFPC main event, but all your leagues, all your dynasty leagues, so on and so forth. Be good, and let's talk again soon, Ryan.
I appreciate it. Talk soon.
You got it. That's Ryan Santos, ladies and gentlemen, at FFLinks on Twitter, the 5th place team owner in the FFPC main event right now. Shout out to him. Great to talk with him tonight. Always learn a lot talking with Ryan Santos. That will complete our show tonight. As a reminder, play the FFPC Weekly Challenge, myffpc.com. No draft or salary cap. You can play in the slim format with 10 players. You can play in the classic format with 12 players. 1 player per NFL team. It's just basically the exact same format as the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge. And then you can watch them ride throughout the weekend and try to win some serious cash, I think up to $2,500. Or if you want to join the $200 entry, it's a 10-team league, and the winner will get a free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event, a contest that will have a $1 million grand prize next year as well. The RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown will return live at 10/9 Central next Tuesday. And I believe, yes, we will have Jared Heinz, who is 6th place, I think, right now in the Footballguys Players Championship, a guy you heard on these airwaves before. He will make his return 10/9 Central next week. The Better Sports Network High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show with yours truly will air 10 o'clock tomorrow night Eastern Time. We will have on the 33rd team's Josh Larkey as my co-host. We'll take you all the way up to midnight tomorrow night. That is obviously on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, but make sure you're watching it on the Better Sports Network app. It is a better experience, and you can register and with the push of a button, you might win some of the great prizes we're giving away, including signed jerseys, so on and so forth. It's a lot of fun. That's at 10/9 Central tomorrow with myself and Josh Larkey. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on this FFPC YouTube channel, 10/9 Central, myself and Farrell Elliott, being joined by the Week 5 leaders in the Footballguys Players Championship. Mo Farunia and Nick Baji will be our guests. So we'll have 2 guests on that week. So you got Ryan Santos tonight. You'll have Josh Larkey tomorrow on the HSFF show. And then Friday night, HSFF Hour, Farrell Elliott, Mo Farunia, and Nick Baji, the leaders in the Footballguys Players Championship. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. And we will see you tomorrow night, Wednesday, 10/9 Central on the HSFF show. And we will see you right here on this channel at 10/9 Central on Friday for the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Good luck placing your bids, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoViz Radio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.